Hi everyone! In today's video, I'll be talking about mental preparation before performance and my journey in finding my own routine. I'll walk you through it first by sharing my personal struggle with stage fright, which is something I continue to work on. And in the second part, I'll be sharing some of my tips and exercises that I found very useful. And I think a lot of it can be applied not just to music performance, but also public speaking or giving a presentation. So one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video is because I think this is a topic that's rarely discussed amongst musicians because it's seen as a sign of weakness. But I know for a fact that so many musicians and performers struggle with it, regardless of where they are in their career. So my hope is that my story will help those who are struggling on their own realize that they're not alone in this. And maybe that some of the tips and exercises that work for me might help them too. When I was younger, a lot younger, I never understood people who got so nervous that their balls shook on stage. For me, for years, regardless of whether the concert was attended by 2,000 people, or it was broadcast, recorded, or whether it was a competition judged by internationally renowned artists, I never felt any fear. I mean, sure, I was a little nervous, but only a healthy dose of adrenaline. I never felt out of control until one performance that changed everything. In 2009, when I was 19, I was one of 30 competitors at the Hanover International Violin Competition in Germany. Now, I don't know if you've ever attended an international violin competition, but the atmosphere is incredibly fierce and tense. The stress level just skyrockets. And I don't know what it was about that concert hall, but I remember as I walked onto the stage for my first round, I felt this immense fear and tension growing inside me. And I couldn't even see the audience because of the spotlights. But for the first time in my life, I was scared before I even played a single note. I remember beginning with my Bach A minor sonata, and there was a voice inside my head that said, "You're going to screw up the next note, the next note, the next note, the next note." Every note I played. And I knew I'd practice like 8 hours a day for the last, few months. I had the thing memorized inside and out, backwards, forwards. I could probably play it in my sleep. But I just couldn't get rid of that voice. And it didn't go away until I finished my 30-minute recital. And afterwards, I couldn't remember a thing about my performance. For the first time in a few major international competitions, I didn't make it to the next round. I felt like my life was over. I was terrified of performing again. And even after going back to school, it didn't go away. And what's worse is that the fear that I felt at that performance has continued to live inside me, even though it's going through different phases to this very day. I tried to fight with it. I tried different things every time I performed. I tried telling myself positive things. I tried changing my technique. I practiced differently. I came up with my own superstitions. I saw a psychoanalyst for a few years. And sometimes these things helped, but nothing was consistent. The fear still lived in me. In 2017, I attended Verbier Festival Academy. And a few of us had the opportunity to attend series of talks with different professionals. And one of them was a sports psychologist, Gary Leboff. And his talks changed my life. For the first time in 8 years, I saw a light at the end of the tunnel. So Gary works with some of the top athletes in the UK, including Andy Murray and British cycling team Sky. And the first thing he told us was his own shock at the lack of mental health research for musicians. and the fact that there were so few specialists in the field, even though he believed that the kind of mental support that musicians need is very similar to the kind of mental support that Gary provides to athletes. Both musicians and athletes are expected to perform at 100% in a specific time frame in front of a large crowd, for which we train every single day. And athletes often work with a sports psychologist like Gary and even travel with them. And so he thought that musicians also require the same kind of mental support because, much like our craft on our instruments, mental strength also requires training. For me, this information alone made me feel so much better because I felt like I wasn't crazy, that I was feeling defeated, or that I was failing to find a solution by myself, because even Andy Murray has someone who coaches him on it. In the next session, we talked about fear, and Gary told us the following things. Number one, winning is a decision. Obviously, in music, it's not about winning or losing. I think it's more about command of time and attention of the audience. But regardless, it's not up to fate. It's not a tossing of a coin. You decide to take yourself to the place where you can make that happen. Number two, don't lie to yourself. I've made this mistake so many times. I told myself, I'm the best, or oh, I'm not scared, or something like that, where I know deep down that's not true. So there's always a part of you that's worried, and there's also a part of you that's not worried. So it's about nurturing that part of you that's not worried, but at the same time, you can't reject the worried part because you'd be lying to yourself. Number three, confidence versus arrogance. I think the confidence is sometimes mistaken for arrogance, and Gary made the distinction between performance arrogance and social arrogance, and how they are not the same thing. And when you're performing, you should find actually your performance arrogance and really own it and become it. Number four, scary versus dangerous. So Gary talked about fear in these two categories. So first is, is it a threat to your life, or are you just scared? And for me, clarifying this difference really helped me see my fear objectively. Number five, controllables versus uncontrollables. Gary told us to make two columns and list the things that you can control and things you cannot control. For instance, at a competition, you cannot control your repertoire, the time of your performance, the jury. If you're a pianist, you can't control the instrument you play on. But you can control the level of your preparation, what you eat that day. You can control also your routine. Now I'm going to share with you 3 exercises that Gary taught us that I find very, very useful. And you can try these with me right now. Exercise number 1. This is a great one for working on your negativity bias. So think of an upcoming performance, or public speaking, or anything that you're preparing for that you're nervous about. Okay, now ask yourself these questions. Number 1, why am I so confident that it won't be okay? Why am I so confident that it won't be okay? Number 2, is it equally likely that it will go well as not well? Is it equally likely that it'll go well as not well? So for this one, it's great to put numbers on them, like percentage. Like, what's the percentage that it won't be okay versus it will be okay? So for example, if you say that there is a 60% chance that it won't be okay, then you know there is 40% somewhere inside you that thinks it's going to be okay. Number 3, where is the evidence that it will go badly? Where is the evidence that it'll go badly? Exercise number 2, you at your best. Write down or mentally note 5 words that describe you when you are at your peak, when you are at your best. So for me, it would be fearless, free, imaginative, colorful, and thoughtful. So the days leading up to the performance, I would practice with these words in mind, and I try to really become these adjectives. Exercise number 3, become your animal. So this exercise is actually from Gary's book, There. And I do this exercise whenever I perform in a high pressure situation. Okay. Think of an animal that represents you at your best. So for me, this would be an eagle. Now, think of yourself at your worst and find an animal that represents that. And for me, that's a mouse. Okay, now close your eyes. Picture your apartment or house or wherever you live and find there a piece of furniture where you can lock away your weak animal. Picture it. Do it. And make sure it doesn't come out. Okay. Now think of your spirit animal, or the animal that represents you at your best. Picture it vividly in as much detail as possible. How does it move? How does it behave? What is its posture? And now try to put yourself into the animal and become that animal. Now open your eyes and you're ready to go. So this has become my go-to exercise and it really helps me personally. And you know, in conjunction with this exercise, I also try to do everything slow, like eat slowly, talk slowly, walk slowly. And you can start this exercise days before your performance. It's actually probably better to do it in advance. So these are some of the tips and exercises that have really worked for me. It was really hard for me to find practical things that I felt made a difference. And I'm really happy I found those things thanks to Gary. I highly recommend Gary's book There. I think a lot of the things he talks about are not specific to any profession and they can be applied to so many different areas in your life. So I'll link that in the description box if I can find it online. And I hope you found this useful and interesting. And I'd love to hear any tips that you have that I could try. So please comment below with your tips or any thoughts, anything you like. So thank you for watching and see you in the next one.